Cowboy rescues Apache girl, only to fall for her mother. Wild West 1881 story. The sun was just beginning to rise over the vast, dusty plains of Arizona in 1881, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold.
The land stretched endlessly, dotted with low hills, dry shrubs, and the occasional stand of mesquite trees. It was a harsh place to live, but for many, including Jack Callahan, it was home. Jack was a young cowboy, tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and hands hardened by years of hard work on the cattle ranches that dotted the territory. He was known among the ranchers and townsfolk as someone who didn't shy away from danger. Yet beneath his rugged exterior, Jack carried a sense of justice and a soft spot for the vulnerable, though few people ever saw it. That morning, Jack mounted his horse, Dusty, a sturdy brown stallion he had raised since it was a foal. Dusty knew him well and responded to even the smallest gestures, picking its way carefully through the rocky terrain. Jack had set out early because he had been hired to round up a small herd of cattle that had wandered too close to the border of the Apache lands. He knew the work would be slow and careful. If the cattle strayed too far, it could cause trouble with the Apache tribe that lived nearby. Over the years, there had been skirmishes between settlers and the tribe, often caused by misunderstandings over land and livestock. Jack, being familiar with both sides, tried to tread lightly, always hoping to avoid conflict. As he rode along a narrow ridge, he noticed movement in the distance, a small figure running across the open plain, kicking up clouds of dust.
At first, he thought it might be a lost traveler or another cowboy, but as he focused, he realized the figure was a child, a young Apache girl. Her long dark hair flew behind her, and she was running as if her life depended on it.
Jack's instincts kicked in immediately. Something about the way she ran, the fear etched on her face, told him she was in danger. Jack urged Dusty forward, moving quickly but cautiously down the ridge. From his position, he could see two men on horseback chasing the girl. They were rough-looking and poorly mounted, likely outlaws or bandits. Jack had seen such men before. They cared little for the law and less for human life. The sight made his stomach tighten. He had faced dangerous situations before, but seeing a child at risk brought a new urgency. He needed to act fast. He spurred Dusty into a gallop, racing toward the girl. The outlaws shouted at her, swinging ropes and waving their hands threateningly. Jack felt his heart pound, but he stayed focused, knowing that hesitation could mean disaster. As he drew closer, he saw the girl stumble over a small rock. One of the men raised a stick to strike her, and Jack knew he had only seconds to reach her. With a surge of determination, he rode between them and the girl, positioning Dusty to blot the bandit's path. Dusty, sensing Jack's tension, planted its hooves firmly and let out a low snort. Jack shouted, warning the men to back off. The outlaws hesitated, surprised by the sudden interference, giving the girl a chance to scramble to her feet and run toward safety. Jack didn't waste a second. He urged Dusty forward, closing the distance and cutting off the bandits. A tense moment passed, and the men, realizing they were outmatched, turned their horses and fled, disappearing into the distance with curses and threats. Jack exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the reins tightly. He turned to the girl, who was crouched behind a small boulder, trembling and wide-eyed. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. She nodded but didn't speak. Her chest heaved as she tried to calm herself. Jack dismounted and approached slowly, making sure not to frighten her. "My name's Jack," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." "You're safe now." The girl's eyes, dark and wary, studied him for a long moment before she spoke in a soft, melodic voice. "Little Feather." Jack smiled slightly, understanding that she was giving him her name. He offered her his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, she took it. He helped her to her feet and guided her to Dusty. "We need to get you back home," Jack said. Little Feather nodded, and together they set off toward her village, a small collection of adobe houses and tents at the edge of the plains. As they rode, Jack noticed the girl's cautious glances. She didn't ask him questions, and he didn't push her to talk. He knew trust had to be earned, especially with a child who had just faced danger. The journey was quiet, broken only by the soft sounds of Dusty's hooves on the dry earth. Jack's mind wandered to what might have happened if he hadn't been there. He had seen too many tragedies on the plains to ignore the risks, and saving Little Feather felt like the right thing to do, even if it brought complications. By late morning, they reached the outskirts of the Apache village. Jack could see smoke curling from small cooking fires, and children playing near the edges of the settlement paused to watch the strange sight of a cowboy leading a young girl. The adults appeared from their homes, wary and alert. Jack slowed Dusty and spoke gently to Little Feather.
"We're here,"
he said. She looked at the village with a mixture of relief and nervousness. An older woman emerged from one of the tents, her eyes sharp and calculating. She approached Jack cautiously, her hands resting lightly on a wooden staff.
"Who is this?"
she demanded in a firm tone. Little Feather ran to her, and the woman gathered her into a protective embrace.
"She is safe,"
Jack said, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm.
"I saw her being chased by men on horseback. I stopped them and brought her back."
The woman's expression softened slightly as she looked at the girl, then at Jack. "You are brave," she said after a pause, "and you have good intentions. But you must understand, we do not trust outsiders easily." Jack nodded, knowing the truth in her words.
"The world was full of people who took advantage of the vulnerable." "I understand," he said. "I only wanted to make sure she was safe, that's all."
Little Feather clung to the woman's side, her small hand slipping into the older woman's. Jack noticed the quiet strength in the woman's posture, the calm way she surveyed the surroundings.
There was a sense of respect in her eyes, and Jack felt a pang of admiration. He knew that surviving in this world required courage, but protecting the people you care for required even more. The villagers slowly returned to their routines, keeping a careful eye on Jack. He dismounted Dusty and offered the horse a drink at a nearby stream. The girl stayed close to her mother, occasionally glancing at Jack with a mix of curiosity and caution. Jack felt a strange sense of connection, as if this small act of bravery had opened a door to a world he had never known so closely. As the day went on, Jack helped with small tasks in the village, mending a fence, carrying firewood, and even assisting in tending to some of the livestock. The villagers watched silently, neither fully welcoming nor fully rejecting him. Jack didn't mind. He was content knowing that Little Feather was safe, and he felt a quiet pride in having acted without hesitation when she was in danger. By late afternoon, the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the plains. Jack sat on a small hill near the edge of the village, watching the golden light touch the landscape. Little Feather ran ahead to join other children playing near the stream, her laughter a soft, musical sound that eased the tension of the day. Jack felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of relief and something he couldn't quite name. He realized that sometimes the right thing to do didn't bring immediate reward or recognition. Sometimes it simply meant acting when no one else would. That evening, as the sky deepened into shades of purple and red, Jack prepared to leave. He knew the plains were unforgiving, and wandering too long in one place could bring danger. Yet he found himself hesitating, glancing back at the village and at the older woman, Running Brook, who had just finished tending to the fire. There was a quiet dignity about her, a strength forged from hardship and loss. Jack felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, an admiration that went beyond respect. For now, though, his duty was done. He mounted Dusty once more, giving Little Feather a reassuring nod. "I'll be around," he said softly, knowing the village would remain vigilant and safe for the night. As he rode off toward the horizon, the wind carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust, Jack couldn't help but feel that this encounter had changed him. The plains were still wide, wild, and full of danger, but somehow they also held the promise of unexpected connections, bravery, and the quiet power of doing what is right. Little Feather and her mother watched him disappear into the distance, unaware that this simple act of courage would mark the beginning of a story none of them could have predicted, a story of danger, trust, and perhaps even a bond that would change all their lives. The morning after Jack had rescued Little Feather, the village seemed quieter than usual. The children played cautiously near the stream, and the adults moved with a careful watchfulness that Jack had not seen before. The events of the previous day had left everyone on edge, and though Little Feather was safe, The memory of her pursuers lingered in their minds like a shadow. Jack, aware of this tension, spent the early hours helping where he could. He repaired a fence that had been damaged in a recent storm and checked on some of the small livestock pens, making sure the animals were secure. The villagers watched him silently, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, respect, and caution. Running Brook, the girl's mother, had been observing Jack from a distance since sunrise. She was a strong woman, tall and steady, with eyes that seemed to notice everything. Her hair, dark and streaked with silver, was pulled back in a practical braid. Life had taught her to be careful, to trust slowly, and to protect her daughter above all else. Though she appreciated what Jack had done for Little Feather, she remained wary. Outsiders often brought trouble, and she had no intention of letting anyone disrupt the fragile safety she had built for her small family. Jack, noticing her glances, felt an unusual sense of respect mixed with curiosity. He had spent most of his life among men on the plains, learning to rely on himself. Meeting someone like Running Brook was different. She carried a quiet authority and an inner strength that made him both cautious and intrigued. He decided that if he were to spend any time in the village, he would do so respectfully, earning their trust rather than demanding it. As the sun climbed higher, a small group of men arrived on horseback, dust trailing behind them. Jack recognized them immediately. It was the same gang that had chased Little Feather the day before. Their presence caused a stir in the village. Adults hurried to gather the children, and some armed men moved to defend the perimeter. Jack's instincts kicked in, and he urged the villagers to stay calm while he assessed the situation. The gang stopped at the edge of the village, shouting threats and warnings. Jack stepped forward, positioning himself between them and the villagers. "This village is not a place for trouble," he called out firmly. "Leave now, or you'll face more than just me." The men sneered, underestimating him, but Jack remained steady, knowing that any rash action could endanger Little Feather and the others. Dusty shifted beneath him, sensing the tension, ready to move at a moment's notice. Running Brook stood slightly behind Jack, her eyes narrowed. She was not afraid, but she was calculating. She knew that Jack had saved her daughter, but she also knew that danger had a way of following those who interfered with outlaws. Her heart pounded as she considered what could happen if a fight broke out in her village. Still, there was something reassuring in Jack's calm and confident stance. It gave her a flicker of hope that perhaps, with him around, they could handle the situation without bloodshed. After a tense standoff, the gang realized they were not going to intimidate Jack or the villagers. Muttering threats, they turned their horses and rode off, leaving a trail of dust behind them. The villagers breathed a collective sigh of relief. Jack dismounted, wiping sweat from his brow, and offered a small smile to Running Brook. She nodded slightly, an acknowledgement of his bravery. But there was still a distance between them, an invisible wall built from years of caution and survival. Over the next few days, Jack remained in the village, helping with tasks and slowly becoming a part of the community. He repaired roofs, helped carry water from the stream, and even taught Little Feather how to properly tend to the chickens. The young girl began to warm to him, though she was cautious. She admired his strength and bravery, but she also remembered the fear she had felt during the chase. Jack treated her with patience, never forcing her to speak or act beyond her comfort, and over time she began to trust him. Running Brook observed all of this quietly. She noticed the care Jack showed for Little Feather and the way he interacted with the villagers. It was clear to her that he was a man of integrity, someone who did not act recklessly or selfishly. Still, she could not ignore the uncertainty of the future. Outsiders were unpredictable, and while Jack had proven his courage, the plains were full of dangers that could strike without warning. She kept a watchful eye on him, testing his character in small ways, asking for his help with tasks that required honesty and strength. Jack responded to each test with patience and skill, gradually earning her trust. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Jack and Running Brook found themselves working together to mend a section of fencing that had been damaged in the wind. Dusty grazed nearby, and Little Feather played in the stream, her laughter echoing across the village. Jack handed Running Brook a hammer, and she accepted it with a nod. They worked in silence at first, the rhythm of their movements creating a quiet companionship. Jack occasionally glanced at her, noticing the way her hands moved with precision and confidence. He found himself drawn to her strength and calm demeanor, feelings he had not expected when he first rescued Little Feather. Running Brook, for her part, felt an unusual sense of ease in Jack's presence. He did not speak unnecessarily, but when he did, his words were thoughtful and respectful. She had spent most of her life protecting her daughter and managing the village, and rarely had she encountered someone who could balance courage with gentleness. She found herself observing him more closely, noticing the small gestures, the way he ensured Little Feather was safe, the way he respected the villagers, the way he treated the land as if it were part of him. As days passed, Jack's connection with the village deepened. He joined in on communal meals, helped repair homes, and even accompanied the villagers on short trips to check on grazing cattle. Through these shared experiences, the villagers began to see him as more than an outsider. He became someone they could rely on, a protector in an unpredictable world. Little Feather, in particular, grew attached to him, often running to him with questions or to show him something she had found in the fields. Jack responded with kindness and patience, reinforcing the trust that was slowly building. Yet, despite the growing sense of safety, the threat of the outlaws lingered like a cloud over the village. Jack knew they could return at any time, and he remained vigilant, patrolling the outskirts and keeping watch during the night. Running Brook observed him with a mixture of admiration and concern. She appreciated his dedication, but worried about what might happen if the danger escalated. One evening she approached him quietly while he was checking on the livestock. "You are brave, Jack," she said softly.
"But courage alone cannot protect us. You must also be careful."
Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know," he replied. "I will do everything I can to keep everyone safe." The tension in the village grew when word arrived that other groups of bandits had been spotted nearby. The villagers held a meeting to discuss defenses, and Jack offered his knowledge of strategy and patrols. Working together, they planned watch shifts and reinforced key areas of the village. The sense of community strengthened as everyone contributed, and Jack's presence became integral to their safety. Running Brook watched him, recognizing the way he had become part of their lives without forcing his way in. She realized that trust, once earned, could create bonds stronger than fear. During a quiet evening by the fire, Jack shared stories of his life on the plains, tales of cattle drives, and the challenges of surviving in the wild. The villagers listened with interest, and Little Feather sat close, eyes wide with wonder. Running Brook observed the way Jack spoke, not boastfully, but with honesty and humor. She felt a growing respect and a connection she could not ignore. Jack, too, felt a deepening admiration for her, captivated by her strength, wisdom, and the love she clearly held for her daughter. Despite the peaceful moments, the underlying tension never fully disappeared. Jack knew that danger was always present on the plains, and he could not allow himself to grow complacent. Yet, amidst the vigilance and preparation, small moments of humanity and connection flourished. Jack and Running Brook's mutual respect grew into a quiet friendship built on trust, shared responsibility, and the recognition of each other's strength. Little Feather thrived under their combined care, learning both the ways of her people and the practical skills Jack could teach her. As the sun set, painting the plains in hues of red and gold, Jack stood on a small hill overlooking the village. Dusty grazed nearby, and the sounds of life in the village carried through the evening air. He felt a mixture of pride, relief, and something deeper he could not yet name. The village was safe for now. The immediate threat had passed, and bonds had begun to form that might endure long after the danger faded. Yet, Jack knew that life on the plains was unpredictable, and new challenges would come. For now, he allowed himself a moment of peace, watching the firelight flicker across the adobe walls, knowing that he had found a place where courage, care, and connection could coexist. The peaceful rhythm of the Apache village did not last long. One early morning, as the sun rose over the dusty plains, Jack was already awake, patrolling the edges of the village with Dusty. His eyes scanned the horizon carefully, alert for any sign of trouble. The events of the previous weeks had made him cautious. The bandits who had chased Little Feather were not the only danger in the area, and Jack knew the plains could be unpredictable and cruel. He had grown attached to the village and especially to Little Feather and her mother Running Brook, and he could not allow harm to come to them. Suddenly, movement caught his attention. Dust kicked up in the distance and Jack squinted, trying to make out the shapes. At first he thought it might be a group of traveling traders, but as he focused, his stomach sank. It was the same gang of outlaws who had tried to capture Little Feather weeks ago. They were approaching fast, riding with purpose and shouting challenges that carried across the dry air. Jack felt a surge of determination. He could not let them reach the village.
He rode quickly back to the center of the village, where the adults were already beginning their morning tasks. Running Brook was near the communal fire, tending to breakfast for Little Feather and some of the younger children.
Jack called out to her, his voice calm but firm.
"They're coming back! We need to prepare."
Running Brook's eyes widened slightly, but she remained composed.
"Gather everyone,"
she instructed, her voice steady.
"We will protect the children first. Then we will face whatever comes." The villagers moved quickly, gathering children and vulnerable members of the community and directing them toward a protected area behind the larger adobe homes.
Men grabbed tools and improvised weapons, axes, farming implements, and a few old rifles that had been passed down through the generations. Jack stood at the edge of the village, surveying the landscape.
The bandits were closing fast, their horses kicking up clouds of dust that spread across the plains like a rolling wave. As the outlaws entered the village outskirts, Jack rode forward to meet them. "You won't harm anyone here," he shouted, his voice carrying over the wind. The leader of the gang, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, laughed cruelly. "And who's going to stop us, cowboy?" he jeered. "You?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He knew that a reckless charge could endanger the villagers, especially Little Feather and the others hiding nearby. He signaled to Dusty and took a defensive position, ready to respond to any sudden attack.
The first clash was sudden and chaotic. The bandits tried to scatter the villagers with loud shouts and aggressive movements.
Jack moved quickly, intercepting anyone who came too close to the hiding areas. His presence was a shield, and he used Dusty's strength to block and redirect the attackers.
Running Brook stayed close to the center of the village, helping organize the women and children, instructing them to stay quiet and move slowly to safer areas. Her calm leadership kept fear from spreading, even as the sounds of shouts, galloping hooves, and clanging tools filled the air. Little Feather, crouched behind a low adobe wall, watched Jack with wide eyes. She had grown to trust him, but seeing the danger up close made her heart pound. She whispered a prayer to the spirits of her ancestors, hoping for protection for Jack and the village. Jack, aware of the importance of keeping her safe, focused all his energy on defending the village's perimeter, using Dusty's agility to keep the outlaws from reaching the hiding spots. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. The sun climbed high, beating down on the dust-filled plains. Jack moved tirelessly, blocking, pushing back, and guiding villagers to safer positions. The bandits, frustrated by their inability to cause harm, began to show signs of weariness. They had underestimated the courage of the villagers and the skill of the cowboy who had arrived to protect them. Jack's movements were precise, his decisions guided by instinct and a deep understanding of the terrain. At one point, the leader of the gang attempted to circle around the village, hoping to trap the children. Jack noticed immediately and acted without hesitation. He spurred Dusty forward, cutting off the man's path and forcing him back toward the other bandits. The outlaws realized they were being outsmarted and outmaneuvered, but their anger only made them more dangerous. Jack felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. Every moment counted, and one mistake could cost lives. Running Brook, meanwhile, had been observing Jack closely. Her admiration for him grew as she watched him protect the villagers with courage and careful thought. She had seen many men in her life, but few combined strength with the level-headedness necessary to lead in a crisis. Despite the fear in her heart, she felt a connection forming, a trust that was not easily given but now seemed inevitable. She knew that Jack's presence had made a difference and that he cared for her daughter as much as he did for the community.
Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the bandits began to retreat. They had lost the advantage, exhausted and frustrated by their failure to break through the village's defenses.
The leader, scowling, called the others to fall back, and the group disappeared into the distance, leaving dust clouds and echoes of their curses behind.
The villagers slowly emerged from their hiding places, eyes wide with relief and gratitude.
Jack dismounted, wiping sweat from his brow, his body tired but his spirit unbroken. Little Feather ran to him, throwing her arms around his legs.
"Thank you, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack knelt to her level, smiling gently. "You were brave too," he said softly. "You stayed calm, and that helped everyone." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and admiration.
Running Brook approached, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You saved us all," she said, her voice carrying both gratitude and something deeper that Jack could not quite place.
The aftermath of the attack left the village shaken. Homes needed repairs, livestock had been scattered, and the sense of safety had been temporarily lost.
Jack helped organize recovery efforts, moving supplies, reinforcing fences, and ensuring everyone had food and water. The villagers worked together, their bond strengthened by the shared experience of surviving the attack. Jack's presence continued to be a source of reassurance. He guided, helped, and protected, never demanding attention or praise, and this humility only deepened the villagers' respect for him. During the evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and pink, Running Brook and Jack found themselves near the communal fire, speaking quietly. Little Feather had gone to bed, exhausted from the day's events.
"You are unlike anyone I have met," Running Brook said softly. "Most men only think of themselves, but you care for others." Jack looked at her, his expression thoughtful.
"I don't think courage means nothing can hurt you," he replied. "It means standing up when it matters, even when you're afraid." Their conversation lingered in the air, unspoken feelings weaving between the words.
Jack felt a pull toward her that was unexpected. He had come to the village to help a child, not to form a bond with her mother, yet something about Running Brook's strength, calm, and wisdom drew him in. She, in turn, found herself considering him not just as a protector, but as someone who might become part of their lives.
It was a complicated feeling filled with hope, caution, and curiosity. The following days were quieter but filled with reflection.
The villagers repaired homes, gathered resources, and returned to their daily routines. Jack spent his time helping, teaching Little Feather practical skills, and growing closer to Running Brook in small, meaningful ways. Their trust and understanding deepened, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the quiet recognition of each other's courage. Yet even in this calmer period, Jack remained vigilant. The plains were unpredictable, and the bandits could return at any time. He patrolled the surrounding areas daily, keeping watch for signs of danger, and taught the villagers simple strategies for protecting themselves. Little Feather observed him closely, learning not just the skills, but the importance of bravery, responsibility, and calm thinking.
One evening, as they watched the sunset together, Jack and Running Brook spoke quietly about life, loss, and hope.
She shared memories of her late husband, the struggles of raising a daughter in a harsh world, and the importance of community. Jack listened intently, offering words of understanding and encouragement. Through these conversations, the bond between them grew stronger, built not on romance alone, but on respect, shared values, and the desire to protect what mattered most. The days turned into weeks, and the village settled into a new rhythm. Jack's presence had become essential, and the villagers had come to rely on him not just for protection, but for guidance, support, and companionship. Little Feather thrived, her trust in Jack growing with each passing day. Running Brook, while still cautious, began to allow herself to feel a connection that had once seemed impossible. But Jack knew the plains could change in an instant. The memory of the bandits' attack lingered, and he remained alert, ready to protect the village and the people he had come to care for. At the same time, he could not ignore the feelings growing inside him for Running Brook, a mixture of admiration, respect, and something deeper that he had not experienced before. The tension of impending danger and the quiet growth of trust and affection set the stage for challenges that were yet to come, testing courage, loyalty, and the bonds of the heart. The attack by the bandits had left a lasting mark on the Apache village.
Even though Jack had protected everyone with courage and skill, the villagers could not ignore the fact that the plains remained dangerous. The sound of hooves or voices in the distance made people pause, hearts beating faster, wondering if trouble had returned.
Every morning, Running Brook would wake to check on Little Feather, and every evening she would look out over the plains, eyes scanning for threats that might come from nowhere. Jack, now a constant presence in the village, shared her vigilance.
He had grown deeply attached to the family, feeling responsibility not just for their safety, but for their sense of peace. Despite the lingering fear, life had to continue. The village slowly began to rebuild, repairing the homes damaged in the attack and gathering resources for the winter ahead. Jack worked tirelessly alongside the villagers, helping to fix fences, mend roofs, and tend to the animals. He noticed how Running Brook moved among her people, guiding them with quiet authority and patience. Her leadership inspired loyalty and cooperation, and Jack admired her even more for the way she balanced strength with kindness. Little Feather had started to talk more openly with Jack, asking questions about the plains, the animals, and his experiences as a cowboy. She wanted to understand everything he did and why he had risked so much to save her. Jack answered patiently, teaching her not just the skills of survival, but also lessons about bravery, honesty, and compassion.
He knew that these lessons were as important as physical protection because the world was harsh and unpredictable, and a strong heart was sometimes the best defense.
As the weeks passed, Jack began to feel a pull toward Running Brook that he had not expected. He respected her, admired her, and found himself thinking about her in quiet moments. He noticed small things, the way she smiled when Little Feather did something clever, the way she worked without complaint, the way her eyes reflected strength and wisdom. Jack realized that his feelings went beyond friendship or admiration. He cared for her deeply, but he was unsure how to express it. He had never fallen for someone so quickly, and the thought of revealing his emotions made him nervous. Running Brook, for her part, also felt something stirring in her heart. She had lived a life filled with loss and hardship. She had learned to rely on herself and to protect her daughter above all else. Yet Jack's presence, his courage, and his gentleness toward both her and Little Feather stirred feelings she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She found herself looking for him during the day, feeling relief when he was nearby and noticing his absence when he rode to check the cattle or patrol the surrounding plains. One day, while Jack and Running Brook were repairing a section of the fence together, a rider appeared on the horizon. Jack squinted and immediately tensed. It was a messenger from a neighboring settlement bringing news that another group of bandits had been spotted moving toward the village. The message was clear. The threat was not over. Jack felt a surge of determination. He knew they had to prepare immediately. He called a meeting of the village's men, explaining what the messenger had said.
They may not attack directly, he warned, but we cannot assume they will leave us alone. We must be ready. Running Brook joined him, her calm presence helping to steady the villagers' nerves.
Together, they organized patrols, reinforced weak points in the fencing, and made sure the children and elderly had safe areas to shelter. Little Feather stayed close to her mother, but she watched Jack with admiration, sensing his dedication and bravery. Over the next few days, the tension in the village grew. Every sound, the cry of a hawk, the rustle of the wind through the grass, even the distant rolling of thunder, made people uneasy. Jack worked tirelessly, riding out to scout the area, checking for tracks and making sure no threat could approach unnoticed. Running Brook coordinated supplies, tending to the needs of the villagers and ensuring that everyone had enough food and water. Together, Jack and Running Brook formed a strong team, complementing each other's skills and instincts. Despite the looming danger, Jack found moments to speak privately with Running Brook. They shared stories of their pasts, laughed softly about small memories, and spoke quietly about the challenges they had faced. Jack realized that he wanted to stay with her and Little Feather, not just to protect them, but because being with them made him feel at home in a way he had never known. Running Brook, too, felt a warmth in her heart that she had not allowed herself to feel for many years. She trusted Jack, and she began to imagine a life where he was part of their family. However, danger remained constant. One evening, as the sun set and the plains glowed in shades of orange and purple, Jack spotted dust rising in the distance again. His heart tightened. He signaled to Running Brook, who immediately gathered the villagers and moved children to safety. Jack rode out alone to investigate, determined to assess the threat before it reached the village. As he approached, he saw a small group of bandits scouting the area, their intentions unclear but menacing. Jack confronted them carefully, using his knowledge of the land to maneuver strategically. He managed to drive them away without a direct fight, relying on clever tactics and quick thinking. But the encounter left him shaken. He realized that the bandits would not give up easily, and the village would always be at risk while the plains remained wild and lawless.
Returning to the village, he found Running Brook waiting anxiously.
"You did well," she said quietly, relief in her eyes. Jack nodded, but he could see the worry in hers and the weight of responsibility they both carried. In the following days, the village slowly returned to routine. But Jack and Running Brook both knew the calm was temporary. They spent long hours planning, preparing, and watching the horizon. The bond between them deepened, growing stronger with each shared challenge. Jack found himself thinking about the future in a way he had never done before. He wanted to be part of their lives, not just as a protector, but as a partner, sharing in the joys and burdens of daily life. Running Brook, too, began to allow herself to consider what it might be like to have someone to rely on besides herself. Little Feather, sensing the growing connection between her mother and Jack, became more attached to him as well. She followed him around, asking questions, helping with small chores, and sometimes simply sitting near him while he worked. Jack treated her with patience and kindness, never forcing affection but earning it through consistent care and protection. He understood that trust had to be nurtured over time, and he worked quietly to strengthen the bond with both mother and daughter. Yet the looming threat of the bandits meant that Jack could not fully relax, nor could the village. Every day brought reminders that the plains were unpredictable and dangerous. Jack remained vigilant, patrolling the surrounding areas, checking for tracks, and teaching the villagers strategies to protect themselves. Running Brook continued to coordinate supplies and maintain morale, guiding her people with a steady hand. Together they were a team, facing challenges with courage and determination. Despite the danger, there were moments of quiet happiness. Jack, Running Brook, and Little Feather would sometimes sit together in the evening, watching the sunset over the plains. They shared stories, laughed softly, and allowed themselves to enjoy small moments of peace. Jack felt a deep sense of belonging he had never experienced before, and Running Brook felt a warmth and comfort she had not felt in years. Little Feather, too, found joy in the safety and companionship that Jack brought to their lives. However, Jack knew that their happiness was fragile. The plains were unforgiving, and danger could return at any time. He remained alert, ready to protect the village and the family he had come to care for. At the same time, he could not ignore the feelings growing inside him for Running Brook. His admiration, respect, and affection had developed into something deeper, something he could not easily hide. Running Brook, too, felt her heart opening in ways she had thought impossible, trusting Jack not just with her daughter's safety but with her own heart. As the days turned into weeks, the village strengthened. Jack's presence and guidance had become vital, and the villagers had come to rely on him not just for protection but for leadership, guidance, and support. Running Brook's trust in him deepened, and the quiet bond between them grew stronger. Little Feather thrived under their care, learning about courage, loyalty, and the importance of family, yet Jack and Running Brook both knew that life on the plains was uncertain. Every day could bring new challenges, and the threat of bandits or other dangers was never far away. Their growing affection for each other had to be balanced with vigilance, courage, and responsibility. Together they faced a world that was harsh and unpredictable, learning to trust, to rely on one another, and to protect what mattered most. The weeks after the bandits' second attack were tense but hopeful. The Apache village had grown stronger from the experience, and the bond between Jack, Running Brook, and Little Feather had deepened into something meaningful and lasting. Jack had become more than just a protector. He was a trusted member of the community, a friend, and increasingly, a part of the family. Running Brook had begun to allow herself moments of quiet hope, feeling that perhaps she could trust someone again, not just with her daughter's safety, but with her heart. Life returned to a rhythm, though the plains remained unpredictable. Each day began early, with villagers tending to livestock, gathering firewood, and repairing homes.
Jack patrolled the outskirts, keeping an eye on the horizon for any signs of danger. Dusty, his loyal horse, followed him faithfully, always alert and strong. Little Feather ran beside them sometimes, eager to help and to learn, her laughter a bright sound that reminded Jack why he had come to care for this small family so deeply. Running Brook often watched them from a distance, her heart swelling with gratitude and admiration. Jack had proven himself time and again, not just in defending the village, but in the quiet ways he supported and cared for everyone. He treated the villagers with respect, helped with practical tasks, and always kept a calm head, even when tensions ran high. She found herself seeking his company more often, sharing moments of conversation, laughter, and quiet reflection. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the plains in hues of gold and purple, Jack and Running Brook walked together along a narrow trail near the stream. Little Feather played nearby, chasing frogs and skipping stones. The air was calm, filled with the gentle sounds of nature, the rustle of the wind through the grass, the soft murmur of the water, and the distant cry of a hawk. Jack spoke first, his voice quiet but steady.
"It's peaceful tonight," he said. "A good time to think about what comes next."
Running Brook nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "We have faced so much," she said softly.
"And yet we have survived. The village is stronger, the children are safe, and
"We have each other." Her voice trembled slightly, revealing emotion she had kept buried for years. Jack reached out gently, taking her hand in his. "I want to be here," he said.
"Not just to protect, but to stay. With you and Little Feather. If you'll have me."
For a long moment, Running Brook looked at him, searching his eyes.
She saw honesty, courage, and something she had not allowed herself to hope for: love. Slowly she nodded, her hand tightening around his.
"Yes," she whispered. "Stay with us."
"Be part of our family."
Jack smiled, a sense of peace washing over him.
He had come to the village as a stranger, a cowboy passing through, but now he had found a home, a purpose, and a family he was proud to protect. The following days were filled with quiet joy and preparation.
Jack and Running Brook worked together to plan for the future. They reinforced the village's defenses, taught the children new skills for survival, and shared stories of the past, laughter, and lessons learned.
Little Feather eagerly followed Jack, learning about the plains, animals, and the ways of both the cowboy and her own people. She thrived under their combined care, her trust in Jack growing with every passing day. Despite this newfound peace, Jack remained vigilant. The plains were wild and unpredictable, and danger could arrive without warning. But he no longer felt alone in facing it.
Running Brook had become his partner, and together they could face challenges with courage and strength. He also knew that his presence had given the villagers confidence, teaching them that bravery, careful thinking, and unity could protect even the smallest community from harm.
As the seasons changed, the village continued to grow. Harvests were plentiful, animals thrived, and the children played freely in the open fields.
Jack and Running Brook spent long hours together, repairing fences, tending gardens, and sitting by the fire in the evenings, sharing quiet moments of companionship. The relationship blossomed naturally, built on trust, shared responsibility, and a deep appreciation for one another.
Little Feather was at the center of their bond, a joyful presence who brought laughter and light to their lives. One afternoon, a group of travelers arrived at the village, seeking shelter and news of the surrounding area.
Jack greeted them, offering help and guidance. He had become known not just for his courage, but for his wisdom and fairness, earning respect from visitors and villagers alike. Running Brook helped coordinate food and lodging, demonstrating the strength of her leadership and the trust she had in Jack. Together, they created an atmosphere of safety and warmth, showing that the village was a place of protection, learning, and community. Over time, Jack began to teach Little Feather more advanced skills, riding Dusty confidently, tracking animals, and understanding the ways of the land. She watched him carefully, mimicking his movements, learning lessons of patience, courage, and respect for the world around her. Running Brook watched with pride, knowing that her daughter was gaining not only skills but a sense of confidence and resilience that would serve her well in the future. As winter approached, the plains grew colder and the nights longer. Jack and Running Brook worked tirelessly to ensure the village was ready. They stored food, prepared firewood, and strengthened homes against the chill.
Yet even in the harsh conditions, there was warmth in the home they had built together. Around the fire, they shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection.
Little Feather slept peacefully nearby, comforted by the presence of both Jack and her mother. One night, as the wind howled outside and snow began to settle on the plains, Jack and Running Brook sat together, hands intertwined, reflecting on how far they had come. "I never imagined," Running Brook said softly, "that someone like you would come into our lives. You have changed everything, for the better."
Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment.
"And you have taught me what family really means," he replied. "It's not just blood. It's trust, love, and the willingness to stand together no matter what comes." The following spring, the village flourished.
Crops grew strong, children played freely, and the villagers' confidence returned. Jack continued to patrol the plains, but now he did so with a sense of purpose beyond survival. He was protecting his home, the people he loved, and the life they were building together.
Running Brook continued to guide the village with wisdom and calm strength, her heart open to the future she had once feared would never come. Little Feather grew taller, stronger, and more confident with each passing day.
She learned the balance between the ways of her people and the lessons Jack had taught her. The three of them became inseparable, a family united by trust, courage, and shared experiences. Jack often found himself thinking about how a single act, rescuing Little Feather, had led to this life, this bond, and this sense of belonging. As the sun set over the plains, Jack, Running Brook, and Little Feather often rode together, their silhouettes against the golden light. Dusty carried them steadily, a loyal companion in their journey. The plains stretched endlessly before them, wild and beautiful, but no longer threatening in the same way. Jack knew that danger could return at any time, but he also knew that with love, trust, and courage, they could face anything. In the quiet moments, Jack reflected on the journey they had all taken, from fear and danger to trust and family. He realized that bravery was not just about facing outlaws or wild animals. It was about protecting what mattered, forming bonds, and standing up for others, even when it was difficult. Running Brook understood the same truth, and together they had created a life filled with hope, safety, and love. Their story became part of the village's history, told in whispers around the fire and shared with visitors who passed through. Jack was remembered not only as a courageous cowboy, but as a man who had risked everything to protect a child, earned the trust of a wise woman, and built a family in the wildest parts of the plains. Running Brook was remembered as a leader who balanced strength with compassion, guiding her people through danger and into hope. Little Feather was remembered as the child whose courage and trust had inspired the man who became part of their lives. Years later, when Jack rode across the plains with Running Brook by his side and Little Feather leading the way, the sun setting in the west, he felt a deep sense of peace. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and challenges, but together they had created something lasting.
They had built a family, a home, and a future.
The plains, once wild and threatening, now seemed to embrace them as part of its story, carrying the memory of courage, love, and trust across the endless horizon. Jack had come to the village as a stranger, a cowboy with only courage and good intentions.
He had faced danger, protected the vulnerable, and earned the trust of a community wary of outsiders. In the process, he had found something more precious than he could have imagined: love, family, and belonging.
Running Brook had opened her heart again, teaching Jack that even in a harsh and unpredictable world, people could find safety, hope, and happiness together. And Little Feather, once a frightened child running across the plains, had grown into a confident, joyful girl, surrounded by love and guidance. Together they rode into the sunset, a family united by courage, trust, and the quiet power of doing what was right. The Wild West was still vast and untamed, but for Jack, Running Brook, and Little Feather, it was now home. A place of protection, love, and the unlikeliest yet strongest of bonds.